So it's time to take a very quick look at color theory and color grading. Now, color theory is something that's ingrained into us from a very, very young age. Now, if you have kids, you'll know this. You'll see them drawing pictures and they'll draw, for example, happy people and it'll be yellow, and they'll draw angry faces and it'll be red, and they'll draw sad people and it'll be blue. Or if you've watched any Pixar film, such as, for example, Inside Out, all the main characters, like the main angry character he's bright red. He's bright red for a reason, because we associate bright red with anger. Now, colors themselves are broadly broken into warm and cool colors, and every color is associated with a positive or a negative emotion. Now, when you choose your image, it's going to have a principal color, which will subconsciously reflect that emotion. And inversely, if you want to bring out that emotion, well, then you choose an image with that principal color. So if you want to bring across more passion or anger, well, then you use red. If you want to bring across happiness or insecurity, then you use yellow. If you want to bring across security versus fear, then you use blue. So obviously the emotion evoked will depend on the subject matter of your image. Now, before we move on, what is this here on the side? Like complementary, triadic, split complementary, these sort of things. Now, this all comes from the color wheel. So now this is mostly used, for example, if you're ever making a website and you need to choose your color palette. So for example, we choose our main color. Here we're going for monochromatic. So our main color, we can move around here and do whatever we want. And here we have different hues where we can show off our highlights and emphases and whatnot. Now, triadic, for example, is we have our principal color and then we have two opposing colors on the opposite end of the color wheel. And as we move around, these colors move, and that gives us our color scheme, where it's all, this is based on colors that go well together. Now, this is not something that you'll principally need for very much for your book. It would be very useful, for example, if you're coming to do your font, or if you're doing a graded color gradient, so that you can choose colors that go well together and you're not choosing colors that clash too much or just go out of the way. Now, color grading in itself is where you modify the entire image's color levels, contrast, saturation, anything like this, to evoke an atmosphere or a stronger emotion than what you'd have just based on the image alone. Now, you're almost certainly familiar with this if you've ever applied a filter to a photo. Now, this is what makes this part quite fun to mess around with. So if your image editing program doesn't support filters and you're not comfortable changing different parameters, then you can let an app do it for you. So the online version of Photoshop, it is basically just a very, very basic photo retouch app. So here we've just taken one of the sample images, but you can upload whatever image you want. And then along the side, we've got our different filters. So let's say, for example, we want a desaturated or an old photo style filter. So that's simply all it is. You can apply more or less as you want, and it's just basically choosing whichever filter you think brings across the emotion that you're going for. Now, for anything in other Photoshops, you're looking at, say, for example, adjustment layers, which I'll show you now in a minute. Now, if you don't want to use Photoshop or anything like this here, now the gallery app on your phone will probably have what you need, or even Instagram or any sort of photo editing application that lets you apply filters to preset photos. You can load in your cover, go into the app, make your modifications, apply whatever filter you want, and then just save it back out. Now, don't go overboard in this though, because you don't want your image looking blown out and losing all the details, which I'll show you now in a minute. You want to make gradual improvements. You're just kind of tweaking, like massaging the result to kind of get it in the direction that you want. Also, try to steer clear from, say, changing hair color or skin color. I've seen a few different indie authors. They say they take they've got a model like this and they say, okay, this is my perfect model, but I need him to be more Indian or Middle Eastern, or I need his hair to be red or something like this here. And they'll try to change it by modifying the color values of the photo. It just rarely looks good. Now, if you do it right though, it can have pretty impressive results. Like this cover makeover that was featured on the Kindlepreneur site. So let's just ignore the typography changes for the minute. Now, all it is a simple color gradient edit, and it's brought the photo from something that you would take at a medieval fair yourself on a phone to something that's much more polished, much more professional, and it's got a ton more atmosphere. And all it is a color gradient with a bloom filter up here. Now, I use this on my own cover, Watchmen, because there's a time travel element to this short story, and I wanted to bring across that sense of past, of nostalgia, of kind of lost memories and lost chances and stuff like this here. And a very, very subtle blue-green adjustment filter does that. So this is the original image, and then I just apply my filter on top of it. So for the most part, you're not really making any major changes. You're just kind of making little modifications. So this is, for example, what I was talking about, blowing it out too much. If you go too far one end, your image becomes unreadable, or you just don't use it. So just make little small tweaks. So you can go highlights, midtones, shadows, whichever. Again, if you're not comfortable with this, just kind of like look around. Any sort of photo editing app will probably do pretty much what you're looking for, and almost certainly better than what I'm doing right here. So don't be afraid to kind of go into it. Like, now you're just trying to kind of hook into the reader's subconsciousness and their learned knowledge of colors, and to just evoke that particular sentiment or feeling. It's a very simple technique, but it can be very powerful.